OK, so we've potentially got the army standing in for Border Force staff, but get this, taxi firms might be block booked to cover for ambulance drivers. Health Minister Will Quince has said that taxis could be offered to lower-risk patients known as Category 3 or 4, which often include elderly patients who have suffered a fall. However, the government has stated that it remains an NHS trust-level decision whether to task cabbies with driving people in emergency situations. Joining me now is Grant Davies, who's a cab driver and also the chair of the London Cab Drivers Association. Yes, good man. Great to have you back on the show. How do you feel about someone giving birth in the back of your cab?
I think it'd be great. I mean, for years and years, you've seen black eyes, can't you? For years and years, black cabs in London have been called the fourth emergency service. You know, every taxi is wheelchair accessible, hearing loops, grab handles. The disability is built into the DNA of the vehicle. And when we had COVID, I personally used to write to the government, Hancock, and say to him, you've got thousands and thousands of licensed black cabs not working. You're telling us the NHS is overwhelmed. People need to come into hospital. Use us. You know, arrange contracts where taxi drivers, there you go, one of my own, where taxi drivers can bring in passengers to and fro from hospital. We are here, willing and able, but I think I think at the end of it, during COVID, it all come down to what they was listening to with their paymasters at Uber, unfortunately, and wanted to use.
No, I'm sorry. I mean, I must say, if I was about to have a catastrophic heart attack, Grant, I'd rather be in the back of a black cab than in the back of an Uber, put it that way. But on a serious note, a couple of points on this. Black cabs, I think, make the world go round. Fantastic people driving them, fantastic vehicles. They do a great service and underused. I tend to think that the moral compass of the person who drives a black cab, as well as their political leanings, tends to be pretty on brand, as far as I can tell. Sound group of people, right? But with respect, mate, it's not your job, really, is it, to sort someone out if they've got a dicky hip? And I can't help but wonder whether or not, in practice, it might get you into a bit of trouble, put you in an uncomfortable situation if something doesn't go quite right.
Well, in London, there's a thing called the taxi card that local authorities have for getting the elderly and the aged around to hospital appointments, to doctors, shopping. You know, it's a subsidised journey. And the biggest contract in London, taxi card, is currently held by Computer Cab, which is a black cab radio circuit. So what I'm saying is black cabs, for years and years, have helped get the elderly and the disabled around London anyway. So if there is a big need for us to step up again, you know, black cabs are sitting here waiting and ready to go.
I think this is fantastic. And actually, black cabs, I mean, you will know this a lot better than I do, but there was a really, really grim sight during the pandemic of almost like these black cab graveyards that would come from people who sadly were not being used, obviously couldn't afford either repayments or whatever the technical details of it were. A terrible, terrible loss to society and indeed all of those people and all of those people's families. But now black cabs, the good British black cab, stepping up and potentially wanting to do its bit. And you think that you would have mass support of other black cab drivers. In a time of crisis, you guys put your shoulder to the wheel and don't go on strike, I suppose.
Well, you've only got to look at Remembrance Sunday, doing the free shuttles for the old war veterans and disabled soldiers to get them to the cenotaph. Listen, the biggest thing about the cab trade is we don't like to bang our own drum, but listen, like you said, black cabs, we've been in London over 300 years. We're part of London. We're great fellas and ladies. And look, we're here to help. If you need us, you know, thank God Matt Hancock's out of government. That's all I can say. But if you need us, get in touch and we'll get you out of this hole.
OK, good stuff. And, I mean, look, I think this is fantastic in a sense, but have you, just out of interest, are most black cab drivers medically trained?
I don't know.
Is there like there's not some kind of like ridiculous ridiculous health and safety black cab course that you lot of go on that might involve, you know, CPR or any of the things that you, because this is the thing. I mean, I'm laughing. It's not funny because obviously the whole thing of this involves the fact that people are ill and will end up needing a cab instead of an ambulance. Don't get me wrong, but there is something slightly morbidly comical about the idea of you lot having to rush to a scene of someone, you know, who's just fallen down the stairs. I mean, you guys becoming the first responders. I mean, I can see this. Maybe this is a way of saving money in the long run, mate.
Well, I just think if you had got, you know, on a serious note, Patrick, if there was people phoning in saying my husband's had a heart attack or someone's fallen out of a tree, etc., then you get an ambulance. But to relieve the pressure on ambulances and the need for ambulances, if there's like hospital appointments, picking up disabled passengers to and from the hospital, sort of quite low risk medical issues, then again, you know, we're fully wheelchair accessible and
just
call
out of
upon us.
Just out of interest, Grant, I don't know if you got the stats on this. Very roughly, what does a cabbie earn a year?
You're going to get me hung here, aren't you?
I don't know. Roughly, no, it doesn't matter. I mean,
it depends.
Roughly,
you get cab drivers who work loads of hours, or some cab drivers who play golf every day or do other training, who only have to go out not so many hours. But I would say, I don't know, 30 grand, something like that.
Yeah, I think realistically what I was alluding to there in a roundabout way is whether or not black cabbies are going to have to try and fill the void for a group of people who potentially earn more money than them but are going on strike, you know, and I wonder whether or not there's a bit of sentiment about that. I don't know, have you got any views on that?
Well, I wouldn't like to see black cabs being used as strike breakers with fellow workers, but what I would like to be seen as, listen, if these NHS trusts who couldn't run a bath are quite prepared to pay 500 quid for a box of paracetamol, I'm sure they can find their way of making sure that any cab drivers that are employed by them on a daily basis would be reimbursed their wages, yeah?